Today I want to think through those who came before me and after me, about family, heredity, and legacy. I also want to think about genetically passed down altered states and their relation to time. For me, I've never had a linear understanding of time, the arrow of time. A lot of my time is caught in deja vu or not understanding things yet. I'm going to tell a story, or a series of stories, not temporally in order, about some experiences with time I've had. In November 2017, I'm sitting beside a pool on a rooftop in Arizona. I'm looking at the scar that stretches from one side of my belly to the next as I write. I don't remember the day I got it, but I sense it. I sense it with a deep hunger. After the surgery, I wasn't allowed to eat for 10 days as my large intestine grew back together. The nurses would give me popsicles, only to have them pumped back out through a nose feeding tube that ran into my stomach. The scar makes me think of my mother. Physically, it might be on my body, but it's her scar too. The years she spent in waiting rooms, doctors' offices, and hospital rooms with me. Time doesn't move normally in these rooms. You look out the window and people are entering and exiting buildings, trying to be on time. In here, there's no time. You have the beeping of the machines, but measures like night and day, breakfast and supper, 4 and 5 p.m. don't exist. Melancholy time exists, as my mother is grieving a child that is only a few feet away from her, but one whose potentiality, whose futures are depleting. In May 2017, when I met Derek, I thought he worked at the hospital. He was very pleasant, well-spoken, and approachable. I felt like I knew him, or I had known him, like I'd know him if I remembered hard enough. His glasses looked broken, and his ability to hold eye contact was spastic. In that moment, I cared deeply for him, like a brother, but there was a sense that maybe he was me. It's something I don't understand yet. There was no hesitation in becoming close with Derek. We shared a madness experience, coarse and twisted, knotted, strung along a stretching expanse. It's not just the physical genetic trace expressing from our genome, some still common present ancestor, but transitory. We're all there, somewhere, untouched, but not always accessible. For me, illness is not a catastrophe, one that isn't simply about making better or curing, but is a species meaning-making event. It's a very ancient space we all inhabit. It's nested deep within each of us, deeper than the genetic strands stretching across geological timescales of billions of years. One that isn't a space for communal immunitary kinship, where our bodies fight off the gnawing of microscopic predators, genetic expressions, and time. When I had my children, I became intensely aware, deeper than an embodied way, more like a geological awareness, long and vast and much closer to the ground than I ever thought I could be, of all the illnesses that marked my life. In the winter of 2016, I was standing in front of my great-grandparents' graves reading to them about their daughter in a land I'd never been to before, and it was like a flash of lightning placed me both before and after, an intergenerational being, and I wondered who I am from and who I am to. I became present to my place in a vast line of parents who've all died, and that somehow I must learn how to die as a parent. Don't forget Paraskiva, Smoky Lake, where your ancestors are buried, reads a note attached to a picture taken in the 1990s in Smoky Lake, Alberta. The picture shows my father and my paternal grandparents with their backs to the graves of my great-grandparents. I visited that site recently, and the gravestone remains new, shiny black marble etched with names and dates. Watching my daughter's hair lighten to a fair blonde, considering her crisp blue eyes, and seeing the ultrasound photos of her malformed kidney, I couldn't help but remember something, a woman I'd never met until finding her nested in my daughter, my maternal grandmother. I've never had any pull to her until I watched her son die, Ellie become ill, and the near miscarriage of my second daughter. Did she ever miscarry? I wanted to understand her at one point, and then, at another point, I didn't want to understand her anymore. Instead, I'm trying to understand myself, to make room in myself for my role as a father. In the winter of 2016, it brought me to my paternal great-grandparents' graves, accompanied by my father. On the first trip, we found our way to the Necyk farm. It was sold over 70 years ago, and we spoke to the current owner. We spoke of the farm's history, and we could tell that the farmer cared deeply for this land. He took us on a drive through the fields. My father then spoke about how his grandmother had a miscarriage in these fields. It was at that moment that I experienced time both fast and slow, and I haven't been able to understand it yet. My father asked if there was still a pile of rocks in the center of the farm. The farmer took us there. My father had explained that the farm assigned to my great-grandfather was a field of rocks. It would take him years to clear the field, each year slowly revealing more land to farm. Seeing that sculpture of rocks struck me. I felt my great-grandfather's labor, his frustrations, and time. I could see how my grandfather never went into farming and became a school teacher. Later, my father and I visited his mother's parents' graves. There was an area off from the gravesite, deep within the trees, for unnamed, unbaptized babies and people that had committed suicide. The graves were so worn you couldn't read any of the names, and no one had replaced them, unlike my great-grandparents' graves. I wondered if they were my relatives. With my disorder, the statistical odds of me committing suicide are incredibly high. I walked up to the top of a small hill, and on that crisp winter day, I could see for miles. I saw the rail line that my ancestors would have come on from the Ukraine. I saw a great many things that were invisible. In September 2016, I began to think of my unknown grandmother. My maternal grandfather had been dead for years now, and I still hadn't cried for him. I wondered what my grandmother would have thought of his death. She would have known about it because she's close to one of my cousins who would have told her. I wondered what their love would have looked like before they did all those horrible things to each other. I thought more of Spedden, Alberta, the city I started writing about years ago. I promised myself that I needed to go there for the film and for myself to see this land, but slowly I started to see the relation between this place and the woman I would never meet. I wrote about both of them. I wrote about the deep sadness I feel trying to hold on to all these things in my life and how I could see how she was not able to. I think of my bipolar diagnosis years ago. Would she have been diagnosed with the same? People say that when they see my daughter Elliot, they see my mother. Last weekend, my cousin said my mother looks identical to her mother. There is a photograph of my 7-month-old mother sitting in a bath in a kitchen sink, smiling. Her mother left a few months before. How did my grandfather take care of those 4 children alone? His family lived in Saskatoon. Who would have helped him? I had no idea where his parents are buried. I imagine myself alone with my children. My daughter is now the age my mother would have been in that photograph. Would she smile at me without her mother? Would I still be there? This last month, my wife and I took Elliot off her daily antibiotics. They were meant to prevent infections from taking over her kidneys. My mother had kidney problems. So did 2 of my cousins on my mother's side. What else of you is nested in my daughter's? In the summer of 2017, I'm in rural Pennsylvania writing about you, thinking about you, being with you, Derek. Are you doing well? Are you still out there? I'm talking to a 5-year-old child named Holden as he swims in an outdoor pool where I have my feet cooling. He wants to know what I'm writing. I said, I'm trying to remember something. He asked, when did it happen? I said, a few months ago. He asked, don't you just remember? I said, I'm trying to. I went manic 3 weeks after I left you. It was the worst episode of my life. I thought of you often during that month. I wondered what that recovery would have looked like if we could have been together. It was so lonely. I remember when we went to the music room on the last day. I recorded your hands as you improvised on the piano. Your voice was captivating. That day you were returning down, slowing, and becoming to realize all the things that you'd been through. It looked painful. You were losing control, but it was part of your journey. It wasn't until I broke that I was able to start putting all these experiences together. I think of you, my daughters, how many things I want to share with you, and how I won't be what I am now, but will be an old man when that day comes. I'm sitting on a small sofa bed in Greenwich Village, New York City, August 11th, 2017, 11:46 p.m., 33 years old, watching a documentary of Bob Dylan with my dad. This is the first time we shared this experience together. He's 66. In June 2017, I don't have any distinct memories that I could record from the next 2 days. I know I took my pills, read a lot, and painted. On Sunday, I woke up and went downstairs. My daughter Mary was crying, and I could tell that my wife Candace was exhausted for being up with the girls multiple times that night. I muttered with hate to her, why did we have kids? Candace shut down and started to cry. Then Elliot asked me for one of those small boxes of cereal that you could pour milk into and eat directly from. I tried to open it with my fingers, then a knife, but I couldn't open it because I was crying too hard. Candace rushed me up to the bedroom. I continued to cry. Elliot came in and asked me what was wrong. Candace said I hurt my leg, but that I'd be okay. Elliot placed a stuffy on my hand, and Candace left me to cry. We talked about many things, things I don't want to remember saying, things no one should ever say. I don't know how long I was there. I heard Candace call my mom, herself crying, and asked her for help. Soon I heard them enter the front door. Candace came up and asked me if I wanted to kill myself, and I said I couldn't be left alone. I fell asleep for many hours. I awoke with Candace beside me. She asked me if I was okay. I felt drained, yet somehow better. I told her I hated myself for what I'd said. It was Father's Day, and I can't remember the faces of my children. My parents were watching them downstairs as Candace and I were upstairs on the bed. I couldn't see anything anymore. All clarity was gone, and I was without affect. I don't remember the rest of the day, but I know I took my pills that night. Sometime later, my dad drove me to the university to see a friend. I laid out several papers I wanted to write with him. He listened. I knew I wasn't making complete sense, but he listened anyways. As we sat outside, a hard rain hit, and we rushed inside. We talked, but I was looking out the window. Did it always rain this hard? I became intensely aware of my body being pulled down onto our planet. I felt the rotation of the Earth, the momentum around the sun, around the center of the galaxy, and the pull of all of everything towards everything within the supercluster of galaxies we're within. I felt the void colder than cold. Him and I still talked. I realized there's no place to escape, that I'm stuck in this husk of flesh on a rocketing planet in an indifferent universe. Why am I not getting the ecstatic revelations, the communions with God that Derek got? Why are mine so meaningless and devoid of hope? I found my dad sleeping in the car in a parking lot. We came home, and I continued to paint. I finally ate. My mind was fast, and I thought I was going to throw up. I was dizzy, but not the kind of dizzy that would make you fall, but the kind that unbalanced your soul. I told Candace about this, and she sent me to the pharmacy to fill my antipsychotic medication. She suspected I was in a manic episode, and I would have to slow myself down with drugs. When I entered the pharmacy, there were aisles and aisles of ordered and repeated objects of care: deodorant, toothpaste, tampons. As I walked through the aisles, my visual experience fell out of sync with reality. The standard seamlessness of my visual field, time itself, became a falsity, like a grand illusion. Walking down that aisle, time itself became a flat disk, where everything that was or would be rotated for infinity, and I'd be in that aisle forever. I think I've dreamt about this aisle. Driving home, the sky opened, and the crisp blue prairie sky took on a new vibrancy, and just then every generation of my ancestors looked at it too, and I became an intergenerational being. I made kinship with everyone before me, and with all my children's children's children. We all shared that sky. I took my medications and slept that night. I woke up and couldn't focus my eyes. I went downstairs, and my family, my children, weren't my own anymore. I thought back to Sunday when I wondered how many pills I'd have to take to die. That's when Candace called my parents for help. They came, and I felt ashamed. My dad went into the garage to look at my paintings. He turned to me and cried and held me. I saw myself crying and holding an adult Elliot. I saw 1,000 of my ancestors crying. But then I realized the physicality of my father's body. He was becoming old. His control over the world, over his children, was waning. I felt so much sadness that he saw me this way. Then I had a vision of Elliot, and I was so scared that I would have to hold her like my father was holding me now. I told him I'd get better. I finished the large painting. I saw Derek. I saw his broken glasses, how similar him and I looked. I felt the wear in his notebook, and I saw his gentleness and intellect. He was 12 years older than me and had been hospitalized 6 times before. I thought my life would be different than his, but 1 month after meeting him, I was here, now, in this room, with these pills, drinking them down and thinking about how to kill myself. I think of my ancestors, stretching back into the Holocene and before. What did their love look like? Had they had children with my disease? Had they grieved for them? What was it like for them to hold their child? I think forward to my children and their children and their children's children. I feel the world in pain, a geological pain. I feel the eco-sickness as I breathe in the smoke from the forest fires in the north. I feel eco-anxieties as the rain hits, one that hits particularly hard, that pours over my gutters and breaks my ancient elm tree. What will their world be? How could I have brought them into this? I feel intense guilt. I think to 2046, when Ellie will be my age now. She will have had first-hand experience of a natural disaster. What impact will that have on her psyche? Will these eco-traumas begin an epigenetic cascade into a bipolar episode? Will I hold her like my father held me?